It was pouring rain the night Samantha met him. She was cold, exhausted, and clinging to a half-wrapped sandwich from her 12-hour hospital shift. The streets were nearly empty, just flashing headlights, puddles, and wind. She took the alley behind the diner as a shortcut, not expecting to see anyone. But there he was, sitting under a broken street lamp, soaked, with a tattered coat clinging to his shoulders and a face hidden beneath the hood. He looked like a man the world had given up on. She hesitated. Something about him didn't sit right. Not in a bad way. Just different. He didn't beg, didn't speak, just sat there, quietly shivering. Without a word, she pulled out her sandwich, knelt beside him, and handed it over. What happened next would become the most unbelievable chapter of her life. Because the man she thought was just another forgotten soul would later summon a helicopter, with her name on the flight manifest. This isn't just a story about kindness. It's about fate, identity, and how one moment of compassion can change everything. So if you've ever wondered whether doing the right thing really matters, stay with me. Because by the time we reach the end, you won't see strangers the same way again. Samantha Rivera was used to being invisible. At 28, she worked back-to-back shifts as a nurse in the city's most overcrowded emergency room. She wasn't glamorous, didn't own expensive things, and rarely had time to take care of herself, let alone chase the dreams she once whispered to herself as a teenager. She had always imagined her life would be bigger. Maybe travel, maybe art school, maybe opening a small wellness center for low-income families. But somewhere between her mom's hospital bills, her little brother's tuition, and rent that never stopped climbing, Samantha forgot what dreams were even supposed to feel like. Still, she never complained. She wore hand-me-down scrubs, tied her hair up every morning before the sun rose, and poured every ounce of energy she had into patients who barely remembered her name. Her world was small, but she had a kind heart. The kind that didn't turn away from pain, even when her own heart ached. She didn't know it yet, but that rainy night was about to test that kindness in the most unimaginable way. Because Samantha wasn't just about to meet a stranger. She was about to walk into a secret so big, it would make her question everything she believed about status, wealth, and worth. It had been raining for hours. The kind of relentless icy rain that soaked through clothes and made the whole city feel gray. Samantha had just clocked out from another brutal 12-hour shift. Her feet ached, her back throbbed, and her only thought was getting home to her small apartment, taking a hot shower, and collapsing into bed. But fate had other plans. As she turned onto Fifth Avenue, her headlights caught a figure on the side of the road. A man, crouched next to a flat tire. The rain poured over him like punishment, drenching his hoodie and jeans. Most people would have driven past without a second glance. But not Samantha. She slowed down, rolled her window halfway, and called out, "Hey, do you need help?" The man looked up, startled. He had a beard, scruffy and unkempt. His clothes were soaked, and his eyes, they looked tired. Not just tired, worn, like someone who hadn't rested in years. "I don't have a spare," he said quietly. "And my phone's dead." Samantha hesitated for a beat. She could have driven off. She owed him nothing. But something in his voice, something fragile and almost ashamed, made her pull over. She stepped out into the rain, grabbed her flashlight from the glove compartment, and joined him beside the car. "I'll help," she said simply. "Let's figure this out together." What she didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined, was that this soaking wet stranger was no ordinary man. He had once sat in the boardrooms of billion-dollar companies, and he knew her name before she ever told it to him. Samantha crouched beside the car, shining her flashlight at the wheel while the rain continued to pour. The lug nuts were rusted, and the spare tire in his trunk was flat. A bad combination. But she didn't complain. She just rolled up her sleeves and tried to find a solution. The man kept stealing glances at her, curious, cautious. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I've been standing here for an hour." No one else even slowed down. Samantha looked up and gave a tired half-smile. "Well, I'm not everyone else." He chuckled softly, the sound more like a cough. "I figured that out already." For the next 15 minutes, They tried everything. Checking for nearby help, fiddling with the jack, debating if she could tow him with her tiny sedan. Nothing worked. Finally, Samantha handed him her phone. "Call a tow truck. It's late, but they'll come." He looked at the phone, then at her. "You don't mind?" "I do," she said dryly. "But you're already soaking wet, and so am I, so we might as well suffer together." The man smiled, more genuinely this time. "Thank you." As he dialed, she finally asked, "What's your name?" There was a beat of hesitation. Then, "Daniel." "Nice to meet you, Daniel." "I'm Samantha." Another silence passed. He studied her as if her name carried weight, like he already knew it from somewhere. But he just nodded. "Nice to meet you too." Once the tow truck was arranged, they sat together in her car to stay dry. And as the minutes turned into a full hour, the conversation deepened. He asked about her job. She told him about the cafe, how she worked doubles, how her manager barely paid minimum wage, how she often fed customers who couldn't pay. "I'm just trying to survive," she confessed. "Sometimes I feel invisible." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "You're not invisible." She turned to him. "You say that like you know me." Another pause. "I've seen people like you before," he said carefully. "People who give when they have nothing left. That kind of kindness stays with you, even when the world forgets." She didn't know what to say. Before she could respond, the tow truck pulled up. The moment was over. But something had shifted between them, something neither of them could quite explain. They had just met, but their paths had already crossed long ago, in a way only Daniel remembered. The tow truck driver, a gruff man with a heavy beard and a kind smile, worked quickly despite the rain. Daniel stood beside him, explaining the issue, while Samantha waited in her car, wiping the fog from the windshield with her sleeve. She watched the two men talking and felt a strange heaviness settle over her. Daniel seemed too composed for someone who'd just spent an hour stranded in the cold. Too thoughtful. Too calm. She shook off the thought. Maybe she was just tired. Once the car was loaded onto the flatbed, Daniel walked over to her window and gently tapped. She rolled it down. "They'll drop me at a nearby repair shop," he said. "Thanks again, for everything." She hesitated. "You sure you'll be okay?" He gave a nod. "I will be. Because of you." And then he did something that caught her completely off guard. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small, folded card. "I'd like to repay your kindness. Please, just hang on to this." She looked down at it. It was plain white, with embossed gold lettering. No name. No phone number. Just one sentence. "Come see me when you're ready to stop surviving and start living." She looked up, puzzled. But Daniel was already walking away, blending into the rain. She almost called out to him. Almost. Instead, she slipped the card into her purse and drove home with questions spinning through her mind. Who was he? Why did that message sound like a promise? And why did it feel like this was only the beginning? The rain had stopped, but something heavier lingered in the air. Back at home, Samantha sat in silence, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the apartment. The card Daniel had given her lay on the coffee table. She kept glancing at it like it might explain itself. She picked it up again, running her thumb over the smooth embossed text. "Come see me when you're ready to stop surviving and start living." The words echoed through her chest. Was it just a poetic way of saying thank you? Or something else? Unable to shake her curiosity, she opened her laptop and typed "Daniel Mechanic, New York" into the search bar. Nothing. She added the shop's name, courtesy of the tow truck driver, and hit enter. Still nothing helpful. Then, in a moment of intuition, she flipped the card over. Tiny gold foil initials were printed in the bottom right corner. DHG. It rang a bell. Somewhere deep, she typed those letters into Google, and her screen lit up with results. DHG Holdings. Daniel H. Graham. CEO. Investor. Billionaire. Samantha's mouth dropped open. She stared at the image. Same man, no doubt. A bit more polished. Clean-shaven. Wearing a tuxedo. But it was him. Her chest tightened. She scrolled through article after article. Real estate, tech startups, philanthropy. He wasn't just someone important. He was someone powerful. Suddenly, their rainy roadside encounter felt surreal. Why hadn't he said anything? Why the secrecy? She sat back in her chair, stunned. The man she had helped, he could have called a private driver, a helicopter, even bought a brand new car on the spot. But he didn't. He'd stood in the rain. Let her change his tire. Let her offer kindness without knowing who he was. And now, it felt like the moment held a much deeper meaning than she realized. Something had shifted. Not just her understanding of him, but of herself. Because for the first time in a long while, she wasn't thinking about work, or bills, or being taken seriously. She was thinking about a man who saw her, not as someone useful or convenient or replaceable, but as someone who still had the power to surprise him. Samantha couldn't sleep that night. Her mind raced with questions, emotions, and an ache she couldn't quite name. The next morning, after tossing and turning for hours, she made a decision. She got dressed, tucked the card into her purse, and hailed a cab. She gave the driver the address printed below Daniel's name. It led her to a towering glass building in the heart of Manhattan. The kind of building that gleamed like a monument to power. The kind she used to pass by and wonder what it was like inside. Now she was walking through its revolving doors. A polished receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" Samantha held up the card. "I'm here to see Mr. Graham." The receptionist's expression shifted slightly. Surprise, curiosity, but she nodded. "One moment, please." After a brief call, she smiled. "He's expecting you. Take the elevator to the 47th floor." Samantha's heart pounded as she stepped inside the sleek elevator. Mirrors reflected her nerves back at her. She smoothed her blouse, took a deep breath, and tried to silence the voice in her head telling her she didn't belong here. When the doors opened, a private assistant greeted her and led her down a long hallway with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. At the end stood Daniel. Not in a rain-soaked hoodie this time, but in a tailored navy suit. He looked taller somehow, more composed, but the warmth in his eyes was the same. "Samantha," he said, his voice calm and steady. "You came." "I had to," she replied. They sat across from each other in a sunlit office that felt less like a boardroom and more like a sanctuary. Plants, books, a single photograph of a woman and a child on the windowsill. "I didn't mean to deceive you," he began. "When I broke down that day, I wasn't just having car trouble. I was walking away from something I wasn't proud of. I needed to remember who I was. You helped me do that." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Daniel leaned forward. "I wasn't always this man. I grew up with nothing. My mother waited tables. Just like you. She raised me on tips and sacrifice. Somewhere along the way, I forgot where I came from. Until you reminded me." Samantha's throat tightened. "I didn't help you for a reward," she said. "I know," he nodded. "And that's why it meant everything." He stood, walked to a nearby shelf, and pulled out a thin folder. "I have an offer for you," he said, handing it to her. "I bought the cafe you work at. I want you to manage it. Better yet, revive it. Make it yours. I'll back every step." Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. Inside was a contract. Salary, equity, creative control. She looked up at him, stunned. "Why me?" He smiled. "Because I believe in people who show up when it matters. And you did, when you had nothing to gain." Samantha stared at the contract in her hands, the words blurring as her eyes welled with tears. This was more than an opportunity. It was a lifeline. A door opening where walls had stood for so long. She looked up at Daniel. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll do it," he said gently. "Say you'll believe in yourself the way I believe in you." She exhaled, slowly nodding. "Okay, I will." That single sentence changed everything. In the weeks that followed, Samantha found herself navigating a life she never imagined. She gave her 2 weeks' notice at the cafe, though it was now technically hers, and spent her free time shadowing Daniel's team, learning the ropes, understanding budgets, vendors, staffing. It was overwhelming, exciting, terrifying, but for the first time in years, she felt alive. Daniel visited often, but not as a CEO barking orders. He asked questions, listened, encouraged. They walked the old cafe together, taking notes, brainstorming layouts, laughing over menus and lighting fixtures. The space transformed, just like Samantha. The reopening was scheduled for a Saturday morning. Samantha arrived early, standing outside the cafe's new glass doors with her hands pressed to her heart. The sign above now read, Sam's Place. Her name. Her dream. She stepped inside. The smell of fresh paint and ground coffee filled the air. Sunlight poured through the windows, dancing across the marble counter and warm wooden tables. The space felt like hope. A small crowd began to gather. Old regulars. Curious newcomers. Her son Elijah, dressed in a button-down shirt he hated but wore for her. Even her former boss showed up, looking stunned and maybe, just a little, proud. But what caught Samantha's breath was the sight of Daniel, standing at the back, hands in his pockets, watching her. He didn't come forward. He didn't try to take credit. He just gave her a small nod, as if to say, "You've got this." She did. She welcomed the first customer with a smile that reached all the way to her soul. Her hands no longer shook. Her voice didn't waver. This was her place. Built not just on coffee and pastries, but on second chances, on faith, on rain-soaked roads and unexpected kindness. Later that night, after closing, Samantha sat in the empty cafe, her heels kicked off, a cup of tea in hand. Daniel walked in quietly, a knowing smile on his face. "You stayed open late," he said. "I needed a moment." He sat across from her. They didn't speak for a while. They didn't need to. Finally, she looked at him. "Do you think things happen for a reason?" He nodded. "I think some people are meant to find each other, even in the rain." She reached across the table and took his hand. The city buzzed outside. But inside Sam's Place, everything was still. And perfect. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many more lives it could touch too. So before you scroll away, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to SoulTwist Stories for more unforgettable tales that stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Your support helps us keep bringing you these powerful stories. The ones that remind us that even in the darkest rain, kindness can be the spark that lights a new beginning. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in second chances.